Lean in a little closer for this one. Seriously, what if I told you that romance, that magical spark we're all constantly chasing, what if it isn't actually about fate or chance or the stars perfectly aligning? What if behind the scenes, it's actually all about strategy? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating and honestly maybe a slightly unsettling look at the hidden architecture of human attraction. We're going to explore the idea that falling in love isn't some random accident. It's a calculated psychological dance. And it all starts with identifying the perfect target. So, what is your missing piece? I want you to really reflect on this for a second. We've all been sold this grand romantic illusion of love at first sight, right? This idea that two perfectly whole, complete people just happen to bump into each other at a coffee shop and live happily ever after. But the psychological reality we're exploring today, it completely dismantles that fairy tale. It introduces a much messier, more complex truth. Absolutely nobody in this world feels completely whole. Every single one of us is walking around with a hidden psychological gap. Okay, let's dive into this. The source material for our investigation today is Robert Greene's highly controversial, yet deeply, deeply analytical book, The Art of Seduction. Now, Greene's work literally strips away all the gooey sentimentality of romance, and he replaces it with a rigorous framework for decoding human vulnerability. It's a deep dive into how influence, attraction, and yes, manipulation operate just beneath the surface of our everyday interactions. For this explainer, we're focusing specifically on Greene's strategies for identifying victims and how to zero in on those hidden needs. Section 1, the illusion of wholeness. To understand exactly how a seducer chooses a target, we first have to recognize that what we present to the world every single day, it's basically just an illusion. We build this social exterior specifically designed to protect our deepest insecurities. As Greene puts it, and this is a powerful quote, seducers have a warrior's outlook on life. They see each person as a kind of walled castle to which they are laying siege. So in this view, human interaction is absolutely not an accidental fairy tale. It is a strategic, psychological siege. The mind is the first point of defense. It's the outer wall of that castle. And a true master acts like a general, carefully planning their approach and aiming directly at a target's very specific weaknesses. And that brings us to the foundational concept of this entire framework, victim theory. Now, the theory posits that, like we said, nobody feels whole. Everyone has a hidden gap or missing piece in their psyche that they simply cannot fill on their own. So when we fall in love, it's usually because someone has stepped in to provide that exact psychological piece we secretly lack. According to Greene, everyone acts as a willing victim when someone else casually hands them the missing piece to their own puzzle. It's a real game changer when you think about it. So the absolutely crucial point here is that to find a target's weakness, you have to learn to completely ignore their outward social exterior. We so often develop a public persona that's the exact opposite of our inner lack. You might think you're dealing with someone who is super tough, cynical, fiercely independent. But you gotta deeply investigate that hidden reality, because a cynical exterior often perfectly hides an incredibly soft, sentimental core that secretly pines for romance and chaos. Basically, if you're only looking at the armor, you are never going to see the actual person inside. Section 2, spotting the missing piece. So, how do we actually get past that armor? How does a master seducer figure out what someone is secretly missing? Well, they obviously don't just walk up and ask them. They have to play the detective. A seducer relies on a very specific set of clues. You've got to look at the periphery of a person's life, rather than just listening to their highly rehearsed words. Pay really close attention to their clothes and adornments. Watch for involuntary gestures, a sudden blush, an unusual shyness, or even a really quick flash of anger. Listen to their offhand comments when their guard drops for a second. Look at their home furnishings, the books they read, the movies they binge, and most importantly, get them talking about their past romances. Slowly but surely, the outline of that missing piece is going to come right into view. Because the core realization here is simply this. People are constantly giving out signals as to what they lack. I mean, these clues are literally everywhere. We all deeply, deeply long for completeness. And if you can step in and provide the illusion of that completeness based on these exact signals, well, you hold tremendous, almost hypnotic power over that person. Section 3, profiling the victim archetypes. 18. That is the massive scale of Greene's taxonomy. Once those clues are gathered, he identifies 18 specific victim types out there in the world, each one harboring a very distinct dominant lack. By identifying exactly which of those 18 categories your target falls into, boom, you instantly know the exact strategy required to draw them in. Now, obviously, we don't have time to cover all 18 today, but we are going to look really closely at a few of the most fascinating ones. First up is the drama queen. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the totally counterintuitive strategy it requires. The drama queen literally cannot function without some constant trauma in their lives. It's how they deflect boredom. So the absolute biggest mistake you can make with this type is coming to them offering stability, peace, and security. No way. That will make them run for the hills. They want pain. They want something to complain about. So to seduce them, you actually have to completely avoid being quote-unquote too nice. You have to be willing to give them the mental rough treatment and turbulence they secretly desire.
Next up, we have the professor. I want you to think of the biggest overthinker in your life, right? The person who analyzes and over-intellectualizes everything. They're totally trapped in their own minds and usually carry this air of mental superiority. But their hidden gap? Well, having developed their minds at the massive expense of their bodies, they secretly long to be completely overwhelmed by raw emotion and pure physicality. They're basically craving a passion that defies all their precious logic. To seduce a professor, you don't try to compete with their intellect at all. You just offer them a physical presence they simply can't analyze.
Then there's the rescuer. Now, this type is deeply, deeply addicted to saving others, mostly because it makes them feel powerful, superior, and in control. Plus, it's a brilliant distraction from their own actual problems. So how do you trap a rescuer? It's simple. You feed their need. A master seducer will act like a damsel in distress, or a totally helpless boy who just can't seem to deal with the harsh world. By exaggerating your vulnerability, your sadness, or maybe sharing a tragic history of bad relationships, you lure them right in by giving them exactly what they want, a brand new project to fix.
You can really see how rapidly your strategy has to shift based on the specific hidden gap. For instance, look at the big baby. They appear super playful and charming on the outside, but their gap is that they are totally irresponsible and desperate for an adult to take care of them. So your strategy? Become their steady, rock-solid, dependable anchor. On the flip side, you have the exotic fetishist. They seem to live a totally banal, normal life, but their hidden gap is feeling incredibly trapped and bored by it all. To win them over, you definitely don't offer stability. You have to become the doorway to another world. You offer them temporary escape and adventure. Simply recognizing the gap instantly dictates the whole shebang.
Section 4. The Ultimate Seduction Rule. As we start to wrap up our investigation today, we arrive at the absolute most crucial warning in Greene's entire framework. And listen, if you ignore this final rule, the whole strategy is going to completely collapse on itself. The biggest danger lies in projecting your own psychology onto your target. You might desperately crave comfort, security, and predictability, but the fatal mistake is assuming that just because you want those things, your target must want them too. Look, if you give a drama queen or an exotic fetishes comfort and security, you aren't seducing them at all. You're smothering them, you're pushing them away. You've absolutely got to expunge the habit of thinking other people have the exact same lacks that you do. Which leads us to the absolute golden rule of victim theory. Are you ready? Never try to seduce your own type. Period. I'll say it again. Never seduce your own type. Just take a moment to let the gravity of that psychological law really sink in. This builds right into Greene's absolutely brilliant puzzle metaphor. You will be like two puzzles missing the same parts. I mean, it makes perfect sense visually, doesn't it? Think about it like a giant puzzle. If you're both missing the exact same pieces, you have literally nothing to offer each other. There's no friction, there's no tension, there's no satisfying click of two interlocking needs. You can never successfully fit together. True seduction requires contrast. It requires you possessing the very thing the other person is desperately lacking. So we've spent this entire explainer looking outward, right? Investigating the armor and the hidden gaps of the people around us. But I want to leave you today by turning that lens back inward. Because based on Greene's framework, you have a gap too. So what is your missing piece? What is that secret lack hiding right behind your social exterior? And honestly, perhaps the more thrilling or totally terrifying question to ask yourself today is this. Who is currently out there looking at your clues and realizing they hold exactly what you need? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the psychology of attraction. Until next time, keep your eyes open.